So see that first step? Somebody has to take a first step. So here is here's a picture I took in Spain last month. It's a church in Seville, which has got a church on every corner. And of all the churches in Seville, this is not what you would call your prime example, but it's a very interesting church. So if you look carefully back up here, there's a minaret. And it was built by Muslim populations in the 12th century. And then, of course, the Christians, did their thing, and they built this middle piece, which is a Gothic piece, I think, built around the 14th century. Well, in 1930, they took this front piece on the front door from another church. It was built about 1650, and said, we think that looks better on this church. And so they put it on this church. And it's a fascinating building. Lots of buildings are, but this one I was very intrigued by. What really struck me was the fact that the building site and its function has not changed since the beginning of time, but the building itself has changed immensely, and it has changed in response to its user needs and its user population. So it's still standing, and lots of people go and look at it. It's in use. In fact, it's being renovated again as we speak. So instead of tearing it down and building something new, they changed it from its original form so completely, but it still serves its same purpose. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting example. So when we think about what it is in the future, we know some things I would hazard. Client-focused. So we need a service menu. We need to offer services that are client-focused. What does that mean? We've been hearing that for a long time. Well, we're pretty sure now, and we heard James say so earlier today too, enablement is what we're after, okay? We're not after doing it for them. We are after helping them to do it for themselves, which means a little more than training, I think. How are we going to govern this service? And as I was saying earlier, I think that without a sense of responsiveness at the local level, we are not going to be able to offer or amend or develop or evolve or eliminate services and make sure that we continue to offer value, because we determine value by what our clients want, not what we have to offer. And they are the ones who are, so to speak, footing the bill. So I think that it's really critical we have a vehicle to communicate those requirements and those values throughout a government whole of library service. We've already mentioned that the service delivery model really can be everything and anything. I don't think it will be in its final form in one stage. We have years of change to go through, I'm sure, and then we'll change again. One big challenge is around the physical collections. I work a lot with science-based libraries, and they have very large collections. And we are understanding that while we have done really good jobs at managing our collections in the past, our physical collections, we aren't used to managing them together as a shared asset. So we have to start to think about the fact that these collections, regardless of where they are physically or who services them, are in fact one whole collection. So those are new conversations we have to have, frameworks for managing shared assets. And some of those conversations, I think, have begun. And then the licenses, these I've got a couple of really the whole of government license question. Now, I think, too, we need to have a chat with our vendors, and we need to talk about the role of the, I will call it reference or information services librarian in the channel, what I call the sales channel of the e-content. What, for example, might happen if all the reference librarians disappear and we just do government-wide pay-per-view? Well, what would happen? that's a question I'd love to talk about. No one wants to talk about it. But I think we should really take a look at that and find out and see who's interested and what the gains and losses are in that situation. Maybe someone will be courageous enough to do a pilot on that one. I'm not sure. I was asked once what all these changes would mean for a client, for our actual end user. What would their future look like? I think it'll just look like this. It's the same thing we've always talked about. They might be using different tools, accessing different resources, but you know, it's the same. You're going to be able to go to one place. You're going to be able to find everything you're looking for. It's not going to be difficult. Not only are you going to be able to find all your library's published content, you're going to be able to find your internal departmental and government content, because we have librarians now working in IM sorting that out. Self-serve document delivery has already been around for some time. What seems to be changing is what we call the accountability for information spending. So in academic institutions, when research grants are applied for, which is constantly, typically there is some kind of budget for information, either an environmental scan or a literature review up front, that kind of thing. It's a cost. It's a costed item, and they know it is, and it's worth it to them. In our environment, because we've always looked after it for the clients, they don't feel that cost. And they would now. They would have to actually consider, you know, what they're paying for and the value of what they're paying for. I think there will always be a need for real-time access to librarians for consultation and assistance, but I think also that those librarians could be anywhere, and I think those librarians are going to feel not only the requirement to use a whole bunch of new tools to do what they do, but they're going to feel pressure around their subject matter expertise again. When I first joined government, there was a requirement to actually have a science degree to work in a science library. That disappeared very quickly. And I think it's going to come back. I think subject matter expertise is more and more, and I guess we see that in these informationist roles, in a lot of the embedding that goes on, that kind of thing, which seems to be very popular, particularly in the health and medical environment. They're going to have their personalized access, which they already have, and you know, this is really, we could probably put 2 pages of tools that they have that they can use. There is demand, and continuing demand, for foresight services, which is what we call, I think, the deep dive reference service. The challenges that are being faced today are, how do we market those services? How do we know? How do we let our clients know we can do that for them? How can we prove it? And how do we know what our clients are even looking for, so we can suggest to them that we could do those that kind of work for them? So I don't think those ones are going to go away. I also think they'll be costed. I think that they'll become more valuable because a research team can hire someone to do that search for them and pay for that product. Then I think we still will have a continuing role in supporting training, collaboration, and knowledge capture. I don't know about knowledge sharing, but for sure knowledge capture. That's already happening in a number of places, and whether it's driven by the massive retirements or not, I'm not sure. Have there been that many? They talked about it for quite a long time. So I talked earlier about enablement. I got a real thing about this, so I wanted to show you my picture. Anybody seen this before? Interesting. So I'm going to read you the description because I'll never be able to define this circle. This thing over here is called the Swindon Roundabout. It's in England. It's actually called the Magic Roundabout. It's a very compact ring road. As you see, it's a circle with traffic in both directions, linked to 5 radial roads, so those 5 roads coming in, by a mini roundabout at each junction. So you can go on the web, you can see a live camera of this. It's kind of cool. So you come in here, you know, you get to turn around, go this way or that way. The center flows in one direction, the other flows in the other. Before that, there was this at that intersection, okay? And, you know, the reason I'm showing you this picture is that over here, you were told when to go, when to stop, right? What to do, and you just hoped everyone else had the right signal, right? No. But seriously, you just followed the rules. You didn't have to think you saw this red light and you went or not. Over there, much more complex system. The drivers make all the decisions. So the builders and the controllers, the guys who programmed this and built this thing, built that thing and said, here's an environment, you work out how to use it. Because you're an intelligent person and you can figure out how not to do that. They gave them some guides, they did. They put in, they did this over a period of 3 years. They put, what do you call those, cones, you know, those orange kinds of cones and things to guide people through this over a period of time. But the fact of the matter is, it is the driver who determines where they need to go and how they're going to get there, and not the controller. And that's what we mean about enabling an environment. So I think there's a great opportunity for librarians to design the information environments, meaning content, of course, because we don't do a lot with systems anymore, but the content environment that your clients can then choose to navigate, rather than having them say, ask me for this, and I'll say yes, ask me for that, and I'll say no, okay? That's my message with that picture. Enablement goes beyond saying they can do it for themselves. You actually have to design the environment so they can be successful in it.
Wendy, did you ever actually drive through that circle yourself, or
No.
in your travels? Okay.
No, I have watched it on the web because I find it really fascinating. And there is you can get all kinds of people's blogs on it. And, you know, I have to admit these photos, I'm not sure about the stoplight, but the Swindon Magic Roundabout has been used in so many presentations, and it's probably public property by now. But it survived. I think it's got to be, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old by now. And I haven't heard of outraged traffic, you know, fatality statistics or anything. Probably everyone goes in and stops. But it's actually, if you are interested in the theory behind this, because there is complexity theory behind it, but the engineering and the design work and what they had to think about and the discussions about how much they could really trust drivers to decide on their own were very interesting. And that's really why it lends itself to, besides being like not a crop circle, but an interesting structure itself. So my last little bit here is what's the outlook for librarians. We had a little look at the outlook for clients. So I don't think there'll be any fewer librarians myself. I think there'll be more, and I think they'll have different names, and they'll be working outside of what we now call a library.